resilience. Tonight we're going to unpack this word, and I want to begin with a story. So one day, a farmer's donkey fell into a well. The animal cried in agony for hours as the farmer tried to figure out what to do. Finally, he decided the animal was just too old, and the well needed to be covered up anyway. It just wasn't worth it to retrieve the donkey. He invited all of his neighbors to come over and help him. This was going to be a task. They all grabbed a shovel and began to shovel dirt into the well. At first, the donkey realized what was happening and cried horribly. Then, to everyone's amazement, he quieted down. A few shovel loads later, the farmer finally looked down the well. He was astounded at what he saw. With each shovel of dirt that hit his back, the donkey was doing something amazing. He would shake it off. He would shake it off every time it hit his back, and he'd take a step up. As the farmer's neighbors continued to shovel dirt on top of the animal, he would shake it off and take a step up. He would shake it off and take a step up. Pretty soon, everyone was amazed as the donkey stepped up over the edge of the well and happily trotted off. Life is going to shovel dirt on you, all kinds of dirt. Our enemy, Satan, is going to throw adverse situations, dirt, at all of us. The trick to getting out of our well is to shake it off and step up. Shake it off and step up. Each of our troubles is a stepping stone. We get out of the deepest wells just by not stopping and never giving up. So, shake it off. Matter of fact, put that in the chat. Shake it off and step up. Shake it off and then step up. It's good. You're going to get hit again. Then you shake it off and you step up. Our scripture reference this evening is Proverbs 24:16, and this is the Passion Translation. For the lovers of God may suffer adversity and stumble 7 times, but they will continue to rise over and over and over again. But the unrighteous are brought down by just one calamity and will never be able to rise again. This is powerful. So this is where the saying, fall 7 times, but get up 8. It is the biblical reference for the character quality of resilience, which is defined as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, tragedy, or significant sources of stress. Let me say that again. It's the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, tragedy, or significant sources of stress. And we all have experienced significant sources of stress, adversity, and tragedy. The key here is resilience. See, the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness must become the byproduct of who we see ourselves to be. In other words, for resilience, we must bounce back or rebound. We must recover. To recover in value, recover in amount, or strength after previous decrease or decline. You must be, I love, this is going to date me, but I love the weebles that wobble because they don't fall down. Because they're weighted in the bottom. You can kick them, you can punch them, you can sit on them, you can sit there for hours, but eventually you're going to have to move, and it's going to pop right back up. We have to be resilient with all that comes against us in life. In Genesis chapters 37 through 50, Joseph showed great resilience by continuing doing God's will after he was betrayed by his jealous brothers, put in a pit, and sold into slavery. Each of these is significant in and of itself, but to have all three of these happen to you is a weight that it could seemingly be too insurmountable to overcome. But even as a servant, he rose to the top of his master Potiphar's staff. Then Joseph was betrayed again, falsely accused of sexual misconduct by his boss's wife. He was then thrown into prison, but eventually he became a leader right there in the prison. Imagine that. Not two words you typically put together, leader and prison. Joseph was called up from prison because of his prophetic gift of dream interpretation and the administrative expertise he had gained in all these adverse circumstances. He was appointed number 2 in command to Pharaoh in Egypt, and ultimately was the instrument God used to deliver nations through a time of drought and famine. Maya Angelou has a quote. It says, "I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it." What would have happened if Joseph was not resilient? There'd be a different ending to this story. It may not even be a story worth using resilience as a way to articulate it. But what if he had given up in his times of adversity? See, God doesn't want us to fold under pressure because there's something on the other side of the pressure. Adversities, tragedies, and significant sources of stress are going to come. Must settle that inside right now. They're going to come. There is no way to avoid them. You may be able to minimize how often they come. You may even, and you can definitely minimize how they impact you, but you cannot prevent them from happening. So resilience is about our ability to adapt. You've heard the saying, adapt or die. To adapt means to make something suitable for a new use or purpose, to modify, or to become adjusted to new conditions. The donkey stuck in the well used the dirt shoveled on top of him that was meant to kill him as a stepping stone for his freedom. Whether he fell in or was put there, he had to make a decision that this was not going to be the end of his story, and he was willing to make the best of a bad situation. Joseph used God-given gifts and made himself useful even in his adverse environments. Even though he was left for dead by his own blood, even though he would find himself in prison unjustly, even though he found himself sold off into slavery, seemingly with no longer any freedom and a position that he could have found himself just simply, woe is me and my dog named Flea. You ever had anybody who always spoke negatively, always talked about all the negative things that were going on in their life, and they were consumed with that? That's not the story of Joseph. That's not the disposition that's going to lead you to being resilient. This transformed Joseph from slave and prisoner into an administrator, leader, and ultimately a governing official. Prison didn't even prevent him from becoming a governing official. Now, when an adversity strikes, are you able to adapt, or do you give up and die? And you may not be physically dead, although you may be working yourself toward that with negativity, but perhaps you've just died on the inside. You've decided to give up striving for better, striving for more, challenging yourself to be the very best you can be because you haven't been able to see yourself beyond the circumstances and events that brought you tragedy and pain and adversity. When was a time when you had to adapt to survive or thrive? Surely you can find an example in your past. And if not, then draw upon the example here of Joseph, that you can remind yourself of what God says and how God will support you when you make your mind up to believe God and His Word. See, resilient people are the kind of people that get up 8 times after falling down 7. We are going to stumble. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to try things and fail. We may even have regrets. Thomas Edison failed at creating the light bulb, some would say 9,999 times. And then it worked on the 10,000th time. Louis Pasteur, who created the pasteurization process, he's believed to have failed at the process of pasteurization 89, 90, 91 plus times before finally coming to the proper process. What if they had stopped? What if any inventor that we have now a product or service or system that we utilize would have stopped? They would not have the benefit. They would not be the person we would now recall upon to remind ourselves of what's possible. How resilient are you? Do you give up easily? Are you easily deterred or distracted? Have you allowed what has happened to you to define you? Traits of resilient people include having a good support system. You have to be in community. You can't go it alone. They maintain positive relationships. Maintain sometimes is the relationships that are of value, and sometimes the maintaining is being unwilling to give up when you've been exposed to negative relationships and not allowing the previous negative relationships to form and shape you so that you don't go continually looking for and then embracing positive relationships that are out there if you'll be resilient. And then there's having a good self-image. How you speak to yourself, how you see yourself is critical to becoming a person of resilience. You have to have positive self-talk. You have to see yourself the way that God sees you, and God's not looking at you based upon the limitations that you may be seeing in yourself. He's not looking at you based upon the limitations that others may put upon you. He's not even looking at you based upon the tragedy and adversities and stressors that have come against you. He sees you as more than a conqueror. The question is, do you? Others, in defining resilience or characteristics, are the capacity to make and carry out realistic plans. And so a person that is resilient is a person that's willing to try and err and try again until such a time that they succeed at whatever the goal is that they're setting for themselves. And sometimes that means adjusting and adapting and altering, but nevertheless you're resilient because you continue to press forward. You continue to look ahead. You continue to process what is, not be overly consumed by what was, and you have an idea of what God is leading you toward, and you're willing to persevere. See, resilient people know they are fighting a spiritual battle, and the fight is for our faith. What do you believe about the God you serve, and what do you believe about who he says you are? Joseph had to believe what God said about him. What he had dreamed was still true when conditions all around him looked exactly the opposite of what God had revealed. Where are you when what you're facing looks nothing like what has been told to you by the God you love and serve? What kind of disposition do you hold? Where is your focus in these times? Can you see that there are more fighting for you than whatever the opposition is coming against you? Resilient people know that prayer to keep going forward is how they strengthen their faith and build resistance. We must pray without ceasing. We must believe the fervent, effectual prayers of the righteous avails much. You have to believe that a part of your prayer process is believing God to speak to you for solutions and answers to circumstances and situations that you're facing, because there is a word for what you're going through. There is a word for what you're challenged by. There is a word for where you're to go in Christ Jesus. But you're going to have to be resilient. When resilient people overcome, they form a testimony that inspires others to endure, persevere, and become more resilient. That's why we use stories of successful people who have endured. They give us a witness. They give us a testimony. They share examples of us. They will inspire and encourage us if we will trust and obey God at his word. So I want to leave you tonight with some tangible things that I want you to think about and determine for yourself whether you will embrace, so that you can see yourself walking this process out and seeing yourself becoming resilient no matter what it is that you're facing. So these are attitudes and tips to become more resilient. Number one, understand that problems and failures are sure to come. They're sure to come. It's guaranteed. You might as well trust it to be so and then choose to learn how to overcome. Much of any life is random. Solomon wrote this. He said, time and chance happen to them all. Ecclesiastes 9:11. Do not view problems or failure as something strange or unexpected. Matter of fact, I prefer to use the terminology not failure, because failure means I refuse to get back up the 8th time. I've just had a stumble. I've made some mistakes. I'm at a place where I have not yet arrived at the end goal, but I've not failed if I've been willing to get back up again. It may not have worked the way that I tried it. It may not have worked with whom I was working with, but I am not a failure while my activities may not have arrived at an end conclusion that I desired. Number two, see purpose in all things. God does not cause all things, but God is in all things, working for your good. And one of my favorite passages, Romans 8:28. We know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. So in every failure, see the good and the purpose of God in it. I guarantee you, this is a philosophy that Joseph held as he went through tragedies, as he went through every adversity. Number three, forgive. One word, forgive. Do not carry resentment of past wrongs. Rather, we forgive others as God has forgiven us. If we truly understand and accept the forgiveness of God to us, its example is our willingness to forgive others. Quickly, completely, and with compassion. Quickly, completely, and with compassion. This is how we must engage forgiveness. It has to be whole. It has to be with all of you. It can't be compartmentalized to actually manifest forgiveness. Jesus taught us to pray, forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors. It is interrelated. It is interconnected. We have to do both. Number 4, stay in the present. I call this mindfulness, and often so difficult to do, especially when the weight of adversity or tragedy is coming over us. We've seen so many different aspects of tragedy over the last 18 months, 24 months, through the challenges in our culture as how we relate to people and processes and politics, but also through COVID and dis-ease and the challenges that we've faced with having our lives turned upside down and having to transition relationally, transition geographically, transition in how we see and engage our health, transitioning in employment, transitioning many through housing circumstances and situations. So much transition, the loss of life, the loss of loved ones, the loss of careers. There's been so much transition, so much tragedy, and some of it abrupt, not slowly coming upon us. You know, I watched my mother pass through cancer. That took 2.5 years. That was slow, but when somebody gets sick overnight and in less than a week, they are now gone after they were healthy and they were vibrant, they were living life to its fullest. That's a tragedy that lingers. But mindfulness is important. Staying in the present is important. Attempting to live each day in each moment is so important. Do not try to see or plan too far down the road. Make short-term goals. Achieve short-term success. Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Matthew 6:30. It's so important that even in the difficulties of tragedies of loss, that we have a sense of mindfulness about the present, and we appreciate where we are, what we have, and what it is that we still have available to us with life still left to be lived. Number 5, keep moving forward. Keep moving forward. In the words of Job, in his days of great adversity, yet the righteous will hold to his way, and he who has clean hands will be stronger and stronger. Job 17:9. Keep moving forward. Job is an example for us of how great tragedy can happen and happen in such a magnitude that it would be easy to find oneself in a state of depression and woe and fear and anxiety and regrets and resentments. Just a myriad of emotions could have come over Job, and he found himself unwilling to persevere, unwilling to be resilient, but he did not. What can we learn from Job's resilience? Ask yourself that question. Number 6, give thanks always. Give thanks always. What does thankfulness have to do with resilience? A thankful heart does not dwell on past failures, but sees the goodness of God all around. If we are mindful, if we are present in each moment, we will see the goodness of the Lord operating in the land of the living in spite of the tragedies and adversities that we're experiencing. And it's so important that we allow this truth to prevail in our lives, because thankful people are appreciative people, and appreciative people are people who are living in the present, who are living in the moment, who are experiencing God and the fullness of His presence, and allowing God to be God, even in circumstances that we do not understand or we did not desire for ourselves. So in everything, Philippians 4 and 6, in everything, in prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known unto God. For we serve a mighty God who hears all of our cries. Matter of fact, He hears the tears as they go rolling down our cheeks, and He captures them. None of them are lost on Him. Number 7, this is an important one, especially when you're dealing with stress. Shun isolation. Isolation is not your friend. Life can be lonely, especially in times of adversity. But you need a team around you. And if you have a team, you can and you will be strengthened, and you can gain resilience. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he or she has no one to help them up. It's Ecclesiastes 4, 9, and 10. This is so important. If you find yourself, it's been difficult in this season of dis-ease and COVID, and you may still be reeling from its effects, even though you have more freedom and access of mobility. But yet we have to ask ourselves, are we really re-engaging community, or have we become comfortable in isolation? Have we been comfortable in limited interactions with others? Are we only in a small nucleus? Have we allowed ourselves to step out of isolation and challenge ourselves in new relationships and new experiences where we get to see ourselves expand our capabilities, expand our willingness to receive, expand our willingness to give? Shun isolation. Then number 8, practice self-care. Practice self-care. You have to have things you enjoy doing, and you have to give yourself space and time to do them. You have to work your schedule to such that you can have time with activities that build life, that build joy, that bring you peace and fulfillment. You have to practice self-care. Make sure that you are not so consumed with problems and work and problems, that you fail to set aside time for your rest and for recreation, with physical and emotional recovery. One of the things that allows me to recover and to work through stress is physical exercise. I enjoy physical exercise. I enjoy challenging myself with new physical activities that will allow me to work my body, work my muscles, gain strength, continue to be flexible. I want to live life to its fullest, and if I get another 25 years on this planet, I want to have the freedom to come and go and do. I want to have the activity of my limbs strong and capable so that I can continue to experience life and experience new things that God will allow me to. Jesus told his disciples to come aside by yourselves and rest a while. One of the aspects of self-care is rest. He gave us a Sabbath for a reason. You need to rest. You need to shut down life. You need to shut down activities. You need to shut down the doing. You need to shut down your mind. You need to turn off all the distractions that want to detract from us and deter us from the good things that are about us, learning more about ourselves and having the quiet and stillness to hear God. He says, be still and know I am God. We literally need to rest and be still. And inside of some of our activities even, we can, if you have things that give you strength and empower you and embolden you and encourage you, in there you can see God working through the things that he allows you to do and be successful at. But even with those, there's a time where you just have to spend time being still, going for walks and just experiencing nature, going to a park and sitting and just experiencing the stillness of life, getting up early in the morning and being out in nature before the hustle and bustle of people out and about is a great time to just be still and experience the stillness of life. Even life has periods of stillness if you'll sit and experience them. There are places you can travel to where there's less people and less activities and really experience what's happening apart from the day-to-day hectic activities that we seem to think that are always mandatory for us to have value and worth. So practice self-care. Number 9, refocus on Jesus Christ. Refocusing on Jesus Christ is critical to resilience. It is easy to become spiritually distracted in the midst of work, trials, and failure. Easy to become spiritually distracted. We can even become spiritually distracted in success. And so you have to refocus. You can't be too high and you can't be too low. You can't be so excited about the good things that you wind up on autopilot doing more that you can continue to garner more success and leave Jesus out. There has to be a continual focus and refocusing on Jesus Christ and making sure that he is the priority inside the success and making sure that he's still the priority even inside of the failures and the difficulties. So make it a discipline to consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. If your soul, if your mind and your body and your emotions and your decision making is discouraged, feels weary and burdened, then something is distracting you from spiritually refocusing on Jesus Christ. If you'll refocus on Jesus Christ, he'll give you the strength to manage your emotions. He'll give you the strength to renew your mind. He'll give you the strength to have the physical abilities that you need to overcome whatever it is coming against you. But you have to center yourself, refocus on Jesus Christ, refocus on his word, refocus on hearing the voice of the Holy Spirit and obeying it. And in doing so, you will see yourself resilient. You'll see yourself persevering and coming through whatever it is that you might have thought was going to always be so. And here is number 10, our final one for this evening. Don't despair. Don't despair. Said another way, and instead pray. Pray without ceasing. Pray about everything. What does prayer have to do with resilience? Jesus taught us that men always ought to pray and not lose heart. Inside our prayer, it must be a manifestation of our heart, not just routine rote things that we share because we've heard somebody else say it or it sounds a particular way. But no, he wants to hear our heart, especially in the challenges that we face in day-to-day life. He wants to have a conversation with us. He doesn't want it to be religious. He doesn't want it to be routine. He wants us to really have a dialogue with him that allows him to speak into our lives and our situations, and we be encouraged by it. We know that in this relationship of prayer, in this walk of intimacy, that we're so close to our Father that he's looking upon us as a prince and a princess, where he's saying, I will withhold no good thing from you. I have all the hills and the cattle upon the hills, and I want to give you what it is that you are in need of, but I want you first and foremost to want me, to want to be with me, to want to sit with me, to be in relationship with me, to sit in my arms, in my care, at my feet, and hear me share good and great things with you. And if you'll do that, especially in the face of adversity, especially when you're going through trial and tribulation, I guarantee you it's going to lift your countenance. It's going to lift your spirits. You're going to hear truth that's going to encourage and inspire and motivate you to see God for who he is, and to see yourself and your circumstances is small, and your God and your Father, your loving daddy, as mighty. And in it, you will persevere. You will come through. You're going to see yourself on the other side soon enough if you'll stay the course, for you are resilient. God bless you. We love you. Thank you for listening to this message today. I hope this encourages you in such a way that you're already thinking about changes that you're going to make, that you know are necessary for you to be the very best version of yourselves and to fulfill what God has called and purposed you to in your life. We are so grateful that you would take this time on a Wednesday evening to sit with us and share with us, and hopefully take some nuggets with you that you'll also share with others and encourage and inspire them also. I want to give a last plug in before we conclude. On December 8th, which is a Wednesday evening at 6 p.m., we are having dinner church right here at 1310 Race Street, the Warehouse Church, right here in beautiful Over the Rhine across from Washington Park. And we want you to join us. We want you to join us for a time of fellowship and food and fun, where we're going to gather together as they did in the very beginning, where they broke bread together, they did Bible study together, they fellowshiped together, and they prayed together. So will you join us December 8th right here at the Warehouse Church, where transformation begins? We love you. God bless.